I transferred the money to my dad, and later I found out that his terminal illness was a first-class ticket to a tropical paradise. Just not the kind people talk about with hushed, sorrowful voices. My name is Ava, I'm 24, and for my entire life, I felt like a footnote in my family's story. The kind of footnote everyone sees but no one bothers to read. I was a functional accessory to the perfect picture. My older brother, Liam, handsome and my dad's pride and joy, and my younger sister, Chloe, the universal favorite whose smile could melt glaciers. And then there was me, just Ava. The one who didn't cause trouble. The one who always understood. The one whose needs could be put off until later because Ava can handle it. I lived in a tiny studio on the edge of town with a perpetually leaking faucet and a neighbor who practiced opera singing at night. My job as a waitress at a diner barely covered rent and bills, but I managed to save every cent. My dream was a down payment on a mortgage. Not for a luxurious house like my parents, but for a small one-bedroom apartment where I could finally breathe and feel like I was in charge of my own life. $7,000. That number glowed on my banking app screen like a beacon promising salvation. $7,000 saved over 3 years from tips, extra shifts, and skimping on everything from coffee to new clothes. Then the call came from my mom, Carol. Her voice, usually steady and a little condescending, was breaking with panic. Ava, honey, something terrible has happened. It's your father. His heart. Everything inside me went cold. My dad, David, had always seemed like an unbreakable rock. Loud, confident, he was the center of our family's universe. What happened? What's the diagnosis? I asked, pressing the phone to my ear as if that could bring me closer to them, make me a part of what was happening. Oh, it's something rare, a complicated name I can't even remember. Her voice trembled, but now I realize it was the tremor of a bad actress. He needs an urgent procedure. A very expensive specialist from out of state. The insurance, of course, doesn't cover it. We're short. She made a dramatic pause. I already knew what was coming next. We're short $7,000. Ava, sweetie, I know you have savings. We'll pay it all back, I swear, as soon as David is better. The world narrowed to her voice and the number on my phone screen. 7,000. My future. My independence. My tiny but my own apartment. I only hesitated for a moment. All my life I had been trying to earn their love, their approval. I was the good girl who didn't argue, who helped, who understood. And here was my chance. A chance to prove that I wasn't just a footnote, but an important part of the text. That I could save my father. Yes, of course, Mom. I'll transfer it now. My voice sounded surprisingly calm. I opened the app, entered the amount, and with a heavy heart, I hit confirm. $7,000, 3 years of my life, vanished into the unknown. At that moment, I felt a strange mix of emptiness and pride. I had done it. I had saved him. Now they would surely see what I was worth. The next few weeks were a blur. I worked myself to the bone, taking every shift I could to fill the hole in my budget. I lived on instant noodles and cheap sandwiches. To my timid questions about my dad's condition, my mom answered briefly and vaguely. He's better, but the recovery will be long. He's resting, the doctors don't recommend visitors. Everything's under control, don't you worry, sweetie. They never once suggested I come visit, never once invited me over. I was on the outside again, but now I comforted myself with the thought that my sacrifice was too important to be forgotten. I waited for a thank you, a call from my dad, a simple thanks. But the phone remained silent. 2 months passed. I was sitting in the small break room of the diner during my 15-minute break, mindlessly scrolling through my social media feed. My fingers automatically swiped past other people's happy lives. Weddings, vacations, new cars. And then I froze. A photo posted by a distant relative, Aunt Mary. It showed my entire family. My father, my mother, Liam, and Chloe. They were standing on the deck of a giant cruise ship, beaming with pearly white smiles against the backdrop of a turquoise ocean. They all had glasses of champagne in their hands. The caption read, "Seeing my dears off on an unforgettable Caribbean journey. A wonderful surprise for the kids from David and Carol." I blinked, sure it was some kind of mistake. An old photo maybe? But no, the date was in the corner. Last week. I clicked on Aunt Mary's profile and opened a whole album titled, Bon Voyage. There they were, posing with the captain. Here were Chloe and Liam coming down a waterslide. And there was my father, David. The same father who 2 months ago was dying from a rare heart condition. He was wearing a tacky Hawaiian shirt, a straw hat on his head, tanned and looking healthier than ever. He was laughing, his mouth wide open, and there wasn't a shadow of illness in his eyes. Only pure, unadulterated happiness. The air was sucked out of my lungs. I scrolled through photo after photo and each one was a punch to the gut. Fancy restaurants, cocktails in coconuts, dancing on the deck under the stars. And not one of them was bothered by their conscience. They were having fun with my money, with my dream, with my life. A cold, clear thought cut through the fog of shock. $7,000. The exact amount. No more, no less. It wasn't a coincidence. They didn't just ask for help. They knew how much I had. They scraped out every last cent to pay for their luxury vacation. A vacation to which I, of course, was not invited. I wasn't a family member to be loved. I was their personal ATM, an emergency fund to be used and discarded. With trembling hands, I dialed my mother's number. She answered after a long ring, the sound of waves and seagulls in the background. Ava? Honey, is something wrong? I can't really talk right now. Her voice was carefree and relaxed. I saw the pictures, I said in an icy tone. The cruise. You all look very happy. And healthy. Especially Dad. Silence fell on the other end. I could hear her breathing. Oh, that. She finally stammered. It was the doctor's recommendation. Fresh sea air, a change of scenery. It's part of his rehabilitation. We wanted to tell you, but everything happened so fast. The lie was so pathetic and clumsy that it wasn't painful, it was disgusting. Like I had stepped in something sticky and foul. Rehabilitation. I laughed, but the sound came out like a choked cough. Mom, just tell me the truth. There was no illness, was there? Another pause. And then a soft click. She hung up. I sat in the dim break room, which smelled of cheap coffee and cleaning supplies. The tears I had been holding back finally streamed down my face. But they weren't tears of grief or self-pity. They were tears of rage. The all-consuming, cold rage that doesn't scream or break dishes but coils deep inside, hardening into steel. They thought I was just Ava, the one who would take it and forgive. They thought I was weak. They were dead wrong. I was no longer a victim. In that moment, in that stinking break room, I became a strategist. And I swore to myself that I wouldn't just get my money back. I would get it all back with interest. I would make them pay for every humiliating moment, for every tear, for every sleepless night. Their perfect world, built on lies and my humiliation, was about to come crashing down. And I would take great pleasure in standing on the rubble. My first impulse was to storm into their big, beautiful house as soon as they got back and cause a scene. To scream, break dishes, and tell them to their faces exactly what I thought of them. But I quickly dismissed that idea. Emotions were what they would expect from me. They would call me hysterical, crazy, ungrateful. They would twist everything around and make me the villain again. No, my plan had to be cold, calculated, and ruthless. I didn't want to just yell. I wanted to destroy. To destroy their reputation, their smugness, their fake image of the perfect family that they had so carefully cultivated. I started gathering information. All my life they had seen me as quiet and unnoticeable. They spoke freely in front of me, discussing their secrets, confident that Ava isn't listening anyway. But I was listening. I remembered everything. I was the invisible archivist of their dirty laundry. I remembered my father bragging to my mother about his creative accounting at his construction firm, which allowed him to optimize taxes. I remembered when my mother went to a design conference a few years ago, and later my father found a hotel bill for two in her luggage. They hushed up the scandal, but I remembered the name of the colleague my mom used to whisper on the phone. I remembered Liam being on the verge of expulsion from college for plagiarism, and how my father resolved the issue with a large donation to the university's foundation. I remembered Chloe's teenage phase when she was caught shoplifting at an expensive boutique, and how our parents convinced everyone it was a terrible mistake and the bad influence of a friend, whom they immediately forced Chloe to drop. Every memory was a bullet in my chamber. But I needed proof. I started small. Under the pretext of grabbing some of my childhood things from the attic, I went to their house when I knew no one would be home. My heart pounded as I went up to my dad's office. It was forbidden territory. But fear gave way to resolve. I knew that for all his love of bragging, my father was terribly careless with his documents. I found what I was looking for in his desk drawer under a stack of old bills. a folder with his firm's second set of books. A quick glance was enough to know. This was dynamite. Next, my mom. I knew she still kept old diaries in her bedroom dresser. She was sentimental. In one of them, from the year of the conference, I found several torn-out pages. But even the remaining entries were full of hints about a new friend who understands her like no one else. It was circumstantial, but combined with other information, it was enough. With Liam and Chloe, it was easier. The digital trail is forever. After a little digging through the email archives on the old family computer, I found the exact exchange between my father and Liam's dean. Phrases like misunderstanding, youthful indiscretion, and generous support for educational initiatives spoke for themselves. As for Chloe, a copy of the police report from that shoplifting incident was still filed away in a folder of important documents. My parents had probably kept it as a reminder of how cleverly they had handled it. With every piece of evidence I found, my confidence grew. I no longer felt like a victim. I was a hunter. Now that I had my arsenal, I needed to choose the perfect battlefield. And fate handed it to me on a silver platter. On the kitchen table, I saw an expensive, gold-embossed invitation. David and Carol invite you to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary. The party was a month away at one of the most prestigious country clubs. Everyone would be there. Their wealthy friends, my father's business partners, all the extended family. All the people for whom they had been staging the play called The Happy American Family for decades. It was perfect. My entrance would be the final act of this play. I decided my main blow would be delivered as a gift. It wouldn't be a flash drive or an envelope of dirt. It would be something more elegant and cruel. I ordered a luxurious leather-bound photo album from a printing shop, with gold engraving, Our 30 Years. A love story. I filled the first few pages with their wedding photos and sweet family pictures from our childhood. A smiling father holding baby Liam. My mother hugging a tiny Chloe. I was even there in a few photos, smiling awkwardly in the background. It was the bait meant to lower their guard. And then the fun began. The next spread. On the left, a glossy photo of my dad with his important business partner at a corporate event. On the right, a neatly pasted printout of one of his black accounting pages with a particularly large sum that had vanished into thin air. The next spread. On the left, an official photo of my mom from that design conference. On the right, a printout of the hotel bill for two and a few of the more tender quotes from her diary about a mysterious stranger. Liam's spread. His beaming face in a graduation gown next to a copy of that letter to my father from the dean, where the price of settling the matter of his plagiarism was discussed in black and white. Chloe's spread. Her sweet high school photo next to that very copy of the police report for shoplifting. And finally, the icing on the cake. The final spread. On the left page, the brightest, most joyful photo from their cruise. The whole family minus me raising glasses against the sunset. The caption in calligraphic script. Enjoying the vacation paid for with Ava's savings for her future. Thank you, daughter. And on the right page, my bank statement. The $7,000 transfer and the subsequent zero balance. I wrapped the album in expensive gift paper, tied a silk bow and placed it in the corner of my room. It sat there like a ticking time bomb, counting down the last days of their peaceful life. In addition to the album, I prepared a speech. Short, calm, without a hint of hysteria. I rehearsed it in front of the mirror dozens of times until every word was as sharp as a guillotine blade. I wasn't going to scream or cry. I was going to speak the truth. Calmly, methodically, and publicly. They feared that more than anything. The night of the 30th anniversary. I walked into the luxurious, brightly lit hall of the country club. Music, laughter, the clinking of glasses. The women were in evening gowns, the men in expensive suits. I was dressed in a simple but elegant black dress I found at a thrift store and tailored myself. Against all the glitz and tinsel, I looked almost austere, which created the right contrast. My arrival caused a stir. My parents, sitting at the head table surrounded by guests, looked at me as if they'd seen a ghost. A mix of annoyance and confusion was written on their faces. I approached, politely congratulated them and handed them a small, modest gift, some trinket I bought as a decoy. The main gift was waiting for its moment. The evening went on. There were toasts full of flattery and falsehoods. Friends talked about what a reliable partner David was. Relatives gushed about what a wonderful hostess and mother Carol was. Liam and Chloe gave a touching speech about how lucky they were to grow up in such a loving family. I sat and listened, feeling nothing but cold contempt. Finally, the MC announced, "And now, perhaps another guest would like to say a few warm words to our anniversary couple?" This was my cue. I slowly stood up and walked to the microphone. The room fell silent. All eyes were on me, quiet Ava. In my hands I held the beautifully wrapped album. "Good evening," my voice came out clear and confident. "I too want to congratulate my parents and thank them for everything they've taught me. And of course to give them my main gift." I saw my mother and father exchange smug glances. They thought I was about to pour out my daughterly love. "You taught me the most important things in life," I continued, looking them straight in the eye. "You taught me the value of family. And the value of sacrifice." I paused, letting the words sink in. "This album," I held it up, "is my thank you. It's the story of your 30 years of love. A story that has everything: passion, secrets, and amazing resourcefulness." I walked down from the stage and approached their table. I placed the album in front of my mother. "Open it, Mom. Let's remember the best moments together." She untied the ribbon with a smile and opened the first page. The smile froze on her face when she turned to the spread about my father and his accounting. My father, noticing her reaction, leaned over the album. His face turned from red to ash gray. Liam and Chloe, sitting nearby, also peered into the album, and their cheerful faces twisted in horror. I returned to the microphone. The room was dead silent. The guests exchanged bewildered looks. "As you can see, our family has seen a lot." My voice was calm and steady. "Dad taught me that laws are made to be creatively bypassed. Mom taught me that faithfulness is a flexible concept. My brother Liam showed me that you don't have to earn a diploma, you can buy it. And my sister Chloe proved that if your parents have money, you can get away with a little theft." The room gasped. I heard someone drop a fork. "But the most important lesson you taught me was very recent." I raised my voice. "You taught me that nothing is more precious than the health of your loved ones. So precious, in fact, that you can take all of your own daughter's savings, her dream of a home, and spend it on a luxury Caribbean cruise. The final pages of this album are dedicated to that very lesson. You'll find your happy faces in my bank statement there. You can compare." I looked around the room. The guests' faces showed shock, curiosity, and a bit of malice. The perfect facade was crumbling in real time. "So thank you for everything. You took my money and my trust. In return, I'm giving you the one thing you fear most in this world: the truth. I am officially resigning from this family. Enjoy the party." I placed the microphone back on its stand. Without looking at the petrified figures of my former relatives, I turned and walked toward the exit. I walked slowly, my head held high, through the rows of stunned guests. A murmur of voices rose behind me, but I didn't look back. Stepping outside into the cool night air, I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe freely. I hadn't gained anything in a material sense. I still had no money, no home. But I had gained something far more valuable. I had found myself. And I was free.